I want to tell you about Listening, Learning and Work. It's a book about indigenous workers with hearing loss and how they can be better supported in employment and training in the workplace. The book starts out with talking about otitis media, widespread middle ear disease that causes hearing loss amongst many indigenous adults, and how it contributes to workplace issues. We assume that people listen in the same way, but we don't. Often people with hearing problems use a lot more visual observation strategies and thinking strategies to think about what they've seen and heard and put it all together as a way of understanding things. This is much harder work as a way of listening and tires people out more quickly. And it's important that in communicating with people, they have support to use these different listening strategies to best effect, so as they succeed more easily in the workplace. An unfortunate accompanying factor of hearing loss is anxiety for many people. This means that well-being and stress management is a really important part of people's self-management and making sure that their work performance doesn't overwhelm their capacity to look after themselves, and that poor attention is the outcome. And it's important that workplaces consider these factors in retaining the many indigenous workers with hearing loss. Work performance is a big issue with people with hearing loss and those who work with them and employ them, and this chapter talks about the issues in work performance, in conflict in the workplace, in communication in the workplace, and how workers can be best supported. Communication in the workplace is often an intercultural affair, with Aboriginal people and non-Aboriginal people working together. And hearing loss can compound some of those intercultural communication effects. And this chapter describes, how that occurs and what can be done to minimise it. Ears and organisations talks about the organisational context and processes that are important to consider in relation to widespread hearing loss. When a high proportion of Indigenous workers have hearing loss, it shapes the way that communication takes place, the way that things are handled, and and this chapter talks about the ways of dealing with things to get the best outcomes. Learning and training, both on the job and off the job, are very important to consider in terms of hearing loss. This chapter outlines strategies that both on the job and off the job training can take into account the widespread hearing loss amongst Indigenous workers.